So how are small investors making passive income in real estate right now? Are you that small investor? Well, that's what I'm going to share in this video about how you can do it as well. All right, so how are these small everyday investors be able to make this passive income? Because we always hear about people with big money making all this kind of money and this and that and the other. But what if you're someone that doesn't have a ton of cash? Maybe you don't have millions of dollars just lying around. Maybe you got tens of thousands lying around. Maybe you've got only hundreds or a few $1,000s lying around. What could you actually be doing to be making passive income? Well, in this video, I'm going to share some of those best strategies to do it with very little money out of your own pocket. And at the end of this, I'm even going to share, if you do have money, what's my favorite strategy about how you make more money too. Okay, so what are some investments you could be doing right now if you're a smaller investor? Now, I don't know how you define a small investor, because that could mean anything to anybody, right? Maybe you've got a few thousand, maybe you've got a few 100,000. I don't know what you consider as being small. I'm going to assume that a small investor means you got maybe a few $1,000s, maybe 10,000, 20,000 bucks, right? Something like that. You're just starting out. You've got some cash. You're excited. You want your money to work for you and work harder because you're so sick and freaking tired of working so hard for that money, right? Well, that's what we want to talk about right now. So what are some strategies you could be doing? Now, I will tell you this. We talk about passive income in this, right? Like, how can you create passive income with a small amount of money if you're a small investor? Well, the best way to do this is, of course, one, if you have a lot of money, you could be a lot more passive. If you've got little money, if you don't have a lot of money, it's going to require a little bit more of your mental effort as well as sometimes your physical effort, depending on the type of strategy you pick. And so I really want you to be aware that if you have a little amount of money, probably means you're going to still put some time into this. Don't think for 1 second all the IG and TikTok influencers telling you can do something, get something for nothing. You can go and just make tons of passive income and with no money out of pocket, or $100 or $1,000. I get sick and tired of seeing that stuff because I know how those guys make their money, and it was not something that was passive at all. It was very active. It was them putting in a lot of hustle and work and time and systems in place to finally get to the point where they could take $1,000 to make them, 100,000 or whatever they claim that they make, right? And by the way, many times some of those influencers are almost like fishermen. They say, I caught a fish that was this big. We know what's real, don't we? Right? So that's what you get with those influencers. So be aware of that. Now, one strategy you can do is called a house hack. A house hack is where essentially you rent a home. You can either rent it or you can buy it. There's definitely a way to buy it too. But you can even rent a house. Maybe you rent a place with several rooms and then you sublease it. You sub-rent it out to other people. Maybe there's multiple rooms. Maybe you get one of those rooms in that 3-bedroom apartment and then rent out those other 2 bedrooms. So that way you start charging them rent and maybe their rent can actually cover your rent. So then you could be living rent free, so to speak, right? There are ways to do that. Even if you buy a home, that's another thing as well. I know many parents will say, my whole plan is to buy this house or this duplex or whatever it might be, have my kid rent it, maybe when they're going to college or whatever, and then they rent it out to roommates or other people as well, and they manage the property, they deal with it. So their responsibility is, I've got to be the property manager, right? I got to be the one that's collecting the rents. I got to be the one that being the bad guy sometimes, saying, hey, you're late on your rent, you got to pay me. But that is a great strategy to make more money. Maybe you live in a house that has got an upstairs and downstairs. Maybe it's even got a bonus apartment above a garage or something like that. Maybe you could be renting out the basement and the bonus unit over the garage. Great way you could be making more money again off the same place, especially if you're not using up the whole space, right? So can you shrink your space, live in a portion of it, still have control of that whole property, but then be able to collect rent from those people? And if you're doing this with rent, it could be little to no money out of pocket because you're already paying rent anyways. You might as well pay a little bit more rent, be able to get more of those payments coming in that allows you to have this extra income source, allowing you to build up your cash more so then you can do more passive investments down the road. Now, the second strategy you can do, number 2, is you could do what's called the BRRR strategy. Now, I'm not saying that because it's getting closer to the winter time. I'm not talking about that kind of BRRR. BRRR is like BRRR. I think I got the right number of R's in there too. Sometimes it could be BRRRR, right? It's like BRRR. BRRR is buy, renovate, rent, and then refinance. And then sometimes people throw the extra 4th R in there for repeat, right? Or rinse and repeat. It might be BRRR, So what does that mean? That means you go and buy a property. And this could very well be a property you live in, because if you live in a property, you could put less money down. For example, if I go and buy an investment property, especially if I'm just starting out, I would have to put down a 20% down payment. That means that this property is worth $200,000. I got to put $40,000 out of pocket on that property. However, if I'm buying this property as my own home, then I can get an FHA loan where maybe I'm putting down like 3% or so down. So instead of putting down $40,000, maybe I'll have to put down like 6 or 7 grand onto that property. Now, of course, yeah, there's interest rates, there's different fees that come with that FHA loan, but if that's a lot less money out of pocket, I can then have that time to not only one, live in that property, I can start renovating it while I'm living in it, and then after I'm done renovating it, I could at some point, ideally you're supposed to be in the house for at least 6 months, but you move out of that home, maybe you go rent or buy something else, and then you of course rent that property out. Well, then after you start to create it as a rental property, guess what? Now you could look at this, maybe there's extra equity in this property now at this point, especially if you have higher rents, then you can actually go and refinance, pull the cash equity out of it, and then use that to put it as a down payment on the next place, and so on and so forth. And that's how you repeat it. And even if you don't refinance it, even if they're saying there's no equity, still you've now got a rental that you had put very little money into that could be covering at least the mortgage payment, maybe beyond the mortgage payment, allowing you to be able to make more money. This does require a little bit more active duty on your part. This might require you to either personally put in some sweat equity by renovating this property yourself, or hiring out, which might require more money out of pocket. And this might take not just months, it could take years to do. Either way, whatever you decide to choose can be a great way to do it. Some people, I've had several friends that have done this strategy to actually build up into millions in net worth, all because they said, I'm just gonna do one per year. Just one property per year. They start with one, and then move on to the next. And the great thing is, because real estate does naturally tend to appreciate, it makes it a lot easier to make money on those properties, because now you get that extra equity you built. You've been paying down the mortgage as you've been paying the payments. Not a lot in the beginning, but you are starting to do that. And of course, you're getting the rental passive income as well. And then you can turn around and then go and pull that equity out and then move it to the next. Or heck, even if you didn't want to rent it out, maybe down the road, you might want to sell it, just get the equity out that way. Then you don't have to worry about refinancing. And then you move on to the next project. You just go bigger and bigger and bigger as you go along. Now we want to talk about how you can be more passive. We talk about how small investors create passive income in this video. Well, maybe this small investment, maybe you've got at least $30,000 that you've got right now. And that's not a lot. In the grand scheme of things, $30,000, like most people, especially financial advisors, don't give you the time of day with 30,000 bucks. But $30,000 could be a down payment on a property. And so if you want to be more hands-off, a lot more passive, now you got a little bit more cash. And I do definitely say if you got at least 25,000 or so, this becomes a much better option, is now this could be a down payment on a property. So that 30,000 could actually be a down payment on a $150,000 property, for example, right? That could be that 20% down. Now, instead of just buying that property and managing yourself, which you could do, what if you had a property manager to manage it for you? Yes, there is a monthly expense that comes out for paying a property manager, but if you do the numbers right and you buy the right properties in the right places, not necessarily in your own backyard. For example, I live in the western half of the United States. I don't buy anything over here. I always look out east. I look out in the southeast or the Midwest more for better properties because they have lower prices but still higher rents. So I look out there, especially if I want to have somebody else manage the property. One strategy this is called turnkey real estate. If you ever Google turnkey real estate companies, there's a lot of them out there. Most of them are okay. Some are bad, some are great. There's definitely different ones that are good and varying levels of benefit. I know within our own network of people, we have like well over 20 different investment operators in our group. About 5 or 6 of them are turnkey operators, but we may only refer to about 2 during any period of the market, because sometimes some areas are good while other areas are better, or some are just bad, and we never want to refer to them at all, where other ones might be the best to refer to. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but turnkey properties, turnkey operators could be a great way to say how them help you buy the property, help you get the financing on it, then be the property manager, so they get the renters in, they get everything else in. You just literally collect the checks that are left over after you pay the management fees. That's a great way to be able to do real estate, a great way that actually when I went broke during the last recession and came back, that's how I started getting back into real estate. Between lending my money and then doing that was one of the first things I was able to do to start generating some income. And the great thing is you buy a real asset, you get all the appreciation, you get all the tax benefits you get from being a renter. Did you know you actually get tax benefits where you might pay little to no tax on the income you receive from rent? You also get all, like I mentioned, all the appreciation, also all the equity gain from paying down the mortgage. Your renters pay down your mortgage for you. And, and the great thing is, again, there's still income coming in from that property as well. There's really 4 types of returns when you add it all up, and they can make some really good money for you. Even if you have just a little bit, over the years, 5 or 10 years, you can really watch that money grow and build bigger. Now, as you have more and more money, maybe you've got at least 50, I would say at least 100 to 150,000 or more. Now you can start diversifying and doing different things. Now, this may not be a small investor in your eyes, which is true, but if you start to build up that investment, now you got more options where you can start lending your money out and doing different things. You can actually go into bigger deals where you might be able to go in a partial ownership into like oil and gas land or something like that, or into apartments, self-storage units. It could be into even things like car wash businesses and things like that. You can actually start to go into these better deals as you start to gain and build more and more wealth. But again, if you're starting as a small investor and you want passive income, it might just be doing that house hack strategy, the BRRRR strategy. It might just be, if you got a little bit more than just a few $1,000s, you might even just go into doing a turnkey property, something easy to get started. There are lots of ways to do it. There's even non-accredited investment funds that are out there that can actually help you create real passive income where you can be hands-off and make great money. All right, there's so many different ways you guys can create passive income, even with little money to a lot of money. The great way to do this, if you want to learn more, is go to our website, moneyripples.com, take the passive income calculator, see how much you can actually be creating, especially if you've got a lot of money. If you got a little bit of money, check out our Money Ripples podcast channel on YouTube here as well.